Good afternoon. To everyone here in the crowd, to people who will be watching this on YouTube later, and to my dad here in the first row. My name is Natalie, and before I started my journey in Go, I was working in Intel doing chip design at the LAN department. I studied computer and software engineering, and my favorite courses were about parallel programming, where we use languages like CUDA. In 2015, I joined a small startup in Berlin, where the backend was entirely written in Go. At that point, the company was 3 years old, which means they started using Go back in 2012, way before it was cool. And this was my first introduction to Go. Like most new users, I struggled. My biggest challenge was probably not enough online answers. And coming from a job with pretty much only internal documentation and tooling, I can't say I was thrilled to land in the world of never mind, figure it out, as common beginner issues on Stack Overflow and on GitHub tend to be. But I was fortunate to have coworkers and people that I met at meetups who could help me. This also helped me develop the superpower of asking stupid questions. But really, no question is stupid. And we all should create this atmosphere at work, in your project, and really everywhere. Now, I want to ask some questions that I've been asking for a while now at conferences and at meetups. Please do stand up. If you've been using Go for over 5 years, please sit down. If you've been using Go for over 3 years, please sit down. Over a year? I would say we have about half of the crowd sitting up now and standing up. Look around. Do you think this is an accurate representation of our community? Thanks, everyone. You can sit down. Go is changing. Yesterday, Russ announced a big upcoming changes in the language. But it's also the community that is changing. Today, there are approximately 1.5 million active Go users. Last year, it was around 700,000. So the community doubled itself in the last year. The number of people who joined Go over the past 9 years equals to the number of people who joined Go last year. So most of the people who are using Go now are beginners. This also means that if current trend continues, next year we'll add more users than all of us using Go today. We can predict about 1.5 million new users who will be adopting Go in 2019. And with growth comes change. I told you about questions that I was asking at the community recently. And from recent answers that I got, I noticed that the profile of a new Gopher today is not the profile of a new Gopher how it was when I started. Today, bigger companies are adopting Go. Blockchain companies are adopting Go. It's becoming trendier, and it's no longer a small language. And while conference organizers do their best to keep ticket prices low, I can tell you that from experience. Still, for smaller companies, it's not affordable to send more than one person. And that one person is not likely to be the beginner. Here's a technology adoption lifecycle graph. In the first 9 years of Go, most of the users were the innovators and the early adopters. They were mostly self-driven learners, and they were hobbyists. But now we're entering the early majority stage, and this DNA changes. New users are now joining because of their jobs, not just because they're curious. And while good ideas come from smart people who are well familiar with the field, new ideas will come from new people. And this new profile of a beginner gopher, it means that the ideas will be different and the needs will be different. But nobody really likes change. How can we be aware and remember to embrace this change? How do we think about beginners? Are they the ones with the obvious repetitive questions? Are they the ones who require training and take chunks from your working time? Are they the ones who require mentoring and all the mental effort that's involved with it? They're the ones at the beginning of the learning curve, which means they do things slower and in a less optimal way. So yeah, being new is hard and it's scary. When I started going to the gym, everything was new. Everyone else seemed to know what they were doing. And there was this unique vocabulary, reps, sets, squats, and everyone else seemed to know everyone else. And I felt lost, and I wondered, what am I doing there? But the gym knew that being new is hard, and they offered trainers to help build a program and introduce to the machines and the exercises. Think about Go. There's a new vocabulary: channels, Go path, Go routine. The culture of communication is different. Yes, you still use Slack, Meetup, or Reddit, but those are full with people you don't know. And the culture of communication is different. All the experience you had in another job or in another language, those people, they don't know about it when you're a beginner. And just like seeing all the regular trainers at the gym with their very strong muscles, while yours are not as visible, is a lot like seeing repos in Go with so many stars, while you're struggling with code. And this makes you feel unqualified. So being new is hard, but being new and different is harder. This room is biased towards more experienced people, because people who are new to a language are probably not attending a conference as big as this one in their first year. And there is even a higher percentage of new people than what we saw. It's hard to be from outside of the US. Go and most tech is English-centric. English is not my native language. And at best, this spices up conversations. Like in my favorite commercial. This is for an English school advertising in Germany. And they show a Coast Guard that is new at their job. And this person is getting called for help. And they say, "Mayday, mayday, mayday. We are sinking." And the German guy answers, "What are you thinking about?" But it also makes communicating your ideas not as simple. Furthermore, most of the tech is US-centric. Most of the jobs are here, most of the conferences are here, most of the Go team is here. It's hard to be from a startup, because you can't always afford training, and you can't afford to send many people to conferences. It's hard to be a hobbyist, because people are writing code for fun, but not as part of their job, probably cannot afford to be here. It's hard to be a non-CS educated, because you don't know the vocabulary, and a lot of the documentation expects you to know concepts you don't know yet. And it's hard to be a minority. Let's talk about why our beginner is important. Beginners have fresh perspective. New users think outside of the box because they don't know the box yet. Their point of view will make Go better. Just like a person seeing a code for the first time has great questions, great feedback, which can improve documentation. All decisions should be revisited every now and then. But having experience creates biases. But having a fresh perspective makes you unbiased. Beginners provide the best critique to the Go APIs because they're stepping into it with a beginner's mindset. People who are new to the community are more likely to be engaged with it and contribute. Here's my story. So, not too long ago, in 2015, I was a beginner in Go. Shortly after I started working in it, I also started organizing the Berlin user group. I was approached by then the organizer, and shortly after I agreed to do this, he told me he's moving to London to start working for Google. So my first meetup was his last meetup, and our speaker was no other than Francesc. The year after, I started running Go Bridge workshops and helping out new chapters, and also I started mentoring new developers. In 2017, I spent a year in Nairobi, where I was volunteering, teaching Go at different programming institutions. This year, I started organizing a conference. I was GopherCon EU, which this year was in Iceland. And now I'm starting a new role, this time as a manager, and I will learn a lot about how other people start. Now, you may think I'm biased towards beginners, and I love it, but it's actually scary, especially when the imposter syndrome kicks in and you wonder, what were they thinking inviting you to give your very first keynote at the biggest Go conference? And it's hard. But I am thankful to have people help me online and offline, mostly offline. And I can say that the in-person bonding proved to be the stronger one. The next wave of tools will come from those who begin now. And those who begin now will also be the ones who pick up a tool, realize something is missing, fast forward, you find yourself updating a version and thinking, how was this feature not there before? Let's make beginnings approachable and easy. People who are new to technology are excited about it, and they make the best ambassadors. So yeah, beginners are awesome. Let's make the community better for them. Beginners are also the building blocks for growing and improving communities. The community will grow as beginners will join, and it will be defined by them. And it is known they have the best parties. There are about 2,000 attendees at GopherCon. This means that only 0.1% of the Gophers are here today. We here at GopherCon are the 0.1%. And with great privilege comes great responsibility. What should you do with it? Most importantly, I will say again, encourage asking questions. No question is stupid. When you're on the Gopher Slack or on Reddit and you're answering beginner's question, do it well. Be nice, be informative, and mainly be patient. If you see a question for the 100th time, you don't have to answer. Answers like, just use the standard library, are not helpful, and they're not friendly. Somebody else can do this who is maybe a bit more fresh. I was working on Lean Go, but this is not the case for many other people. And sure, Go is the coolest language out there, but I think, are you isolating yourself from meetups and conferences in other languages and other technologies, like data science or Python? We should involve ourselves in other events and give talks about Go in more general conferences. This can be a great way to bring more beginners. Many companies mix Go with other languages, like Scala or Java. So switching completely to Go only, maybe not the most practical learning for a new developer. Speaking of meetups and conferences, your offline activity is as important as your online one. Making a good connection over a meetup is probably more useful than being right on Reddit. And Go supports communities online. And there are ongoing initiatives to make Go a more offline community, like Women Who Go, who is the group for women and gender minorities in the Go community. Or like GoBridge, we're building bridges to educate and empower underrepresented communities. Here's the Berlin user group. I've been organizing for the 4th year now, and let me tell you, hosts and venues are still not easy to find. Even if companies are generally willing, it's not trivial. You'll need to find a budget. You'll need to find an employee who volunteers to stay late. You'll need to find speakers, and you need to find attendees. And each one of you can help out a lot. Ask yourselves, does your office have a meetup space? Is there a budget for drinks and food? How can you access it? Do you know how to host an event at your office? Who's the person you should speak with? Once you do have answers for all those questions, help a person who's looking to host an event. Then they can go on and find speakers and publish the event to bring more attendees. Having done this for quite a while now, we became somewhat automated. And I'm happy to share tips and help anyone who wants to improve or start a meetup. This year, I organized for the first time GopherCon Europe. One of the biggest problems beyond the usual sponsorships, hello, sponsors in the crowd, was accepting donations. Organizations and private people wanted to give money to cover expenses for people of diversity backgrounds. But I found myself on the other side of this, actually telling people that it's technically really complicated accepting donations because the event is taking place outside of the US. And still, GopherCon Iceland was probably simpler to organize than other events. Who here is planning to attend or sponsor or speak at GopherCon Vietnam, Brazil, Russia, or India? Who here have heard of them? I want to see more hands. Now you heard of them. Focusing just on online or just on offline means giving up on good parts of the community. Maybe we could work towards mixing both and making both more accessible. I am happy to announce the newest addition to the Go Wiki, a community slides page. If you give a talk at a meetup or at a conference, just share your slides here. And you can raise me to be the first person who uploads slides here. Be excellent to each other when you go home. Beginners are the future of a community. Let's make the community better for beginners. As the conference is coming to an end, and you will be going back home, take some time to think about what we talked today. Make online documentation better. Set the tone for discussions and encourage asking questions, reminding that no question is stupid. Try to mix Go with other languages and other technologies. Engage in general tech events, meetups, and conferences, so you can bring the knowledge you gained here. One of the workshops we ran at the Berlin chapter of Women Tech Makers was Go. We ran it alongside other workshops like Android and JavaScript. Those who liked Go started showing up at the Go meetups and started attending Women Who Go. Share your conference or meetup slides at the new wiki page so people will always know where to find that really cool project you're working on. Help your local offline community. Search for the local meetup. If it exists, offer them help with hosting, giving a talk, or even recording and uploading it to YouTube. For the Berlin meetup, I can say we always use speakers. If you don't have a local meetup, start one. The Google developer groups is one way to do it. If you travel, try to see if there's a local meetup and see if you can offer a talk there. Or maybe even attend a smaller conference. Offer to give them a presentation and talk with attendees to spread the knowledge you got here. And mainly, be future compatible and be open for changes. Be excellent to each other tomorrow. I'm planning to go home having made a few new friends here. Who's joining me? Tomorrow is a community day, and it's meant exactly for this. If you see people at this conference who are new to you, say hi, add them to your clique, ask them what's their favorite design pattern. Maybe next year, you'll ask them for help with the tool that they wrote. Tomorrow, at the community day. Thank you.